Basically, the Guestographic concept is sort of the name that Brian Dean, to my knowledge, coined from Backlinko. So he's the SEO expert that writes it at Backlinko. That's his site. He has like a few courses, which I understand are super good. I haven't taken any of them, but he seems to be a good guy, very smart. So Brian implemented several different techniques, and then in his courses and in his blog he shares the results. I think mainly in the blog he sort of shares the results and leaves out some details so he can sell you a course, which I could appreciate that. And the idea here is you create an infographic, and an infographic is basically imagine a very long blog post. And then you need to summarize it and put it into a picture so you can just fit it on a small poster. Like if you go to, trying to think of a good example, which I didn't ahead of time, but I'm thinking of a doctor's office or the dentist office or something like that, where they have a poster that is conveying some fairly complex information, but they use images and they use just nice headlines and copywriting so that you can gather that information in a pretty easy to consume format. So that is exactly what an infographic is. So a lot of people, or I guess a lot of websites and webmasters and marketers started to create infographics for whatever their niche was, whatever the topic was, and then they would go out and publish them on their site, but then they would include a snippet of code so that other bloggers could put the same infographic on their site, and they allowed them to use their material as long as they linked back. So at its core, it really is a link building type strategy where people would freely allow you to publish their content on your own site as long as you gave them credit through the backlink. So pretty smart. And this, I'm not sure when it started, but I imagine there was some some version of it happening ever since links were valuable and someone figured out how to do it and incentivize the, I guess, content creators to give their work away. So anyway, I'm sure it's been around for a while. It was really popular in the last, say, 4 to 5 years or so. I mean, I think right when I was getting into online marketing 4 years ago, I think it was sort of on the upward trend, probably close to peaking. And it got very popular, so popular that a lot of sites were not so interested in infographics because so many sites were doing infographic campaigns, and they were sending, after Brian published his information and guide and job aid on infographics, and Neil Patel published a lot of stuff about it too. At least those are the two people that I found that information from. It was saturated. So, and it sort of starts in the marketing area. So marketers do a lot of this, I guess, infographic campaigns. They did a lot of infographic campaigns, and then other industries would pick it up. So like fitness and health and other industries started using those same tactics, and then it gets saturated there too. So at some point, infographics were not as effective because everyone was trying to publish infographics. There were services to create infographics, and it became more of a commodity. It wasn't so special or interesting. So at that point, Brian looked to figure out a different thing to do, and that was to combine guest posting with infographics. Of course, you combine the two words and the phrases, you end up with Guestographics. So that's what we're talking about, where basically you are showing someone the infographic, but you don't want to give them an assignment. You don't want to give them a chore of having to write a full writing a full post and all their commentary about the infographic. So Brian's idea was to write a short intro to accompany the infographic, hence Guestographic. It's a short, mini paragraph intro to the infographic and that's where he would insert his link. And then after that, you know, if the blogger wanted to add a little bit more, they could. At that point, it's much easier for them to write a sentence or two and then just publish the infographics. Brian gets his link, you get your content, and then everyone's happy. So that is the Guestographic concept. You know, that is just combining infographics with the guest posting concepts, and then you end up with a, you know, something that's a little more unique. If I had the opportunity to publish an infographic or a guestographic, I'd probably go with a guestographic. It saves me some time. If I had the opportunity to post a guest post or an infographic or a guestographic, I would probably, you know, aim for the guestographic, because the infographic is quite interesting and it's a little bit different. It takes a little extra work, a little bit, you know, there's a graphic component, of course. So basically, I tried this in one instance and it worked okay. So, you know, part of the strategy with an infographic is, you know, you can list the references of your information on the, you know, on the infographic so that people are more likely to share it. Other bloggers are more likely to share it, which is cool. The thing is, you know, it's still kind of a saturated area, and to get someone to share your material on social, you know, it's a bit of an ask. They may or may not be interested in promoting you. So they may just, you know, not be interested in promoting you at all, and they don't care that you use them as a reference and that you're helping, you know, them out. So that is one thing. The other part is with social, depending on the channel, and like, I think once, this is the part that I never refined. I just had a low interest in pursuing it more. But there are certain channels and I guess social media networks that are more effective in different industries. So if you approach a particular industry that doesn't have a Facebook following and they share your stuff on Facebook, well, it's not really helpful, even though they may have, you know, lots of subscribers or lots of followers. If they're not, sorry, if the followers are not active on Facebook or they're not seeing the shares, then it doesn't really matter that they shared it, even if they have, you know, 100 million followers. If no one reads it, then it's like it didn't happen. And that is what happened to me. So they would share it on, you know, Twitter, or they would share it or pin it there, pin the post on Pinterest, and then nothing would happen. And I think if I figured out like who sharing what in the right, on the right platform, that is where the magic happens. Because like, I could find someone that doesn't have that many followers, but they're really active. That would work pretty well. So it's very interesting and, you know, good. Actually, I'll tell an example in a second, but basically, I think like many plans and many strategies, it can work, right? Guestographics can work, infographics can work really well, but I think you only have great impacts from that if you stick with it and you refine your process. So I tried the Guestographic stuff once, didn't work that great. I'll tell you, I had another project where we had a very long infographic and it looked terrible, took 30 minutes to put together, and it took off on Pinterest. There were something like, I haven't checked in a while. The last time I checked about a year ago, there was something like 21,000 pins or something. I mean, we weren't even trying. We didn't tell anyone about it. We didn't promote it. It just took off on its own. So it's definitely one of those things where it could work well, but not necessarily. So it does come with refinement and just continuing to try. Okay, Exonet, thanks for, Exynet, thanks for joining up today. Appreciate it. David says, there's another strategy that you find a post you want to link for and make a better graphic than they already have and make a simple graphic design just for them and link back to your site as the source. Interesting. So let me make sure I understand that. So you find a post that you want to link for and you make a better graphic than they have. Oh, so you reverse engineer someone else's Guestographic, I think. I think I understand that. Cool. And then Leo, what's up? Thanks for joining up today. Glad we're back on a normal schedule here. Thanks for the mention on the NSP post. So by the way, I think if you're watching this, you probably know I blog at Niche Site Project. So I just finished a 3-part series on content, starting from like coming up with content ideas and approaching that, and then hiring people to help you, and then scaling it. So 3-part series, it's very thorough, I think, and kind of takes you step by step. Check it out if you haven't looked at it. And Nick says, when I say nothing would happen, could I expand on it? What was I expecting to happen? Was there a CTA that I had on it, etc.? That is a very good question. So, and I was sort of blending a few things in there. So thanks for asking this question. So so I was referring to a very specific area where I wasn't necessarily asking for a link on my infographic. And this is a little bit away from the Guestographic concept, more in the area of infographic. So the infographic had, say, 10 references of sites that I used to put together the information. And then I reached out to each one of those resources and asked them, let them know I referenced them, asked them if they would share it or link to it or something like that. And even if they, first of all, it was hard to get them to even share it, which was slightly surprising because they weren't necessarily big sites with like big amount or large amounts of followers. But my more general point was, if an influencer has some followers on some social media platform and they share it, it doesn't mean at all that you'll get a lot of visitors from it, or to your point, was there a specific call to action? No, but a lot of times I think, and I still fall into this trap, by the way, but a lot of times we'll feel like, oh, if we can just get this one influencer to share my work, boy, that would probably make a huge difference. And I can tell you that like social media is so crowded right now, it has to be like really exceptional for anyone to actually care at all. Most of the time, if someone shares your stuff on social media, unless they are like an influencer that people really trust and they have a lot of people, probably not that many people are going to follow through with it. And so Nick, to answer your question, mainly it's sort of like the interaction of someone's followers is sort of unclear until you see it in action. And basically, I think I've gotten like pumped up that I was going to be on like some podcast or multiple podcasts, and then turns out nobody listens to those, or the people that do don't really take action, and they like never went to visit my website, even if there was like a content upgrade, a clear call to action and stuff like that. So it really has to be like the right marriage of, content, active followers, and all that stuff. I'm totally going off on a tangent here, by the way. So, okay. And then David says, it's not you said nervously, but I think you mean necessarily. It's not an infographic, but it could be any graphic for the post. Gotcha. And then Nick follows up and says, aren't most branding strategies like that? No immediate action or return. Yes, I think you're right. The interesting thing is marketers like me, or any number of them, they'll lay out a specific plan. Actually, Backlinko is a really good example. So a lot of the Backlinko articles and blog posts showcase very like awesome results, and they're like exceptional results, and they're the kind of results that most people wouldn't expect. It's the kind of stuff where it's like, Brian gives an example of his own site and says, I did X, Y, and Z, and I I increased my traffic by 420% in 2 weeks just by like reaching out to a few people. It's true, right? But those are exceptional results by a very specific person. So it's really hard to like translate that. The thing is, when we, look at the results, we see the results and then the easy 4-step process that he went through. I do the same thing, by the way. I'm just using him as an example in this case. So it seems like the strategies have a faster return. And I could tell you, there were a few cases where like I did, the stuff I was supposed to from a branding standpoint to say build my email list using content upgrades. And sometimes it worked like a small percentage, right? Like 5 or 10% of the time, it works awesome. And then most of the rest of the time, like nothing discernible seems to happen. But over time, like I do see, like you said, it's not an immediate return. Usually it doesn't happen right away. It's more like saturating certain areas so that like people eventually, in my case, see me as an authority in whatever it is I'm working on. And by the way, I'm talking a lot about like niche site project areas in this case, but if you're thinking just about like niche sites, then, it's a lot of times it's not as saturated as like the marketing area, because marketers tend to, that's what we do. We market a lot of stuff, so it's more saturated in these areas. But when we do look at, say, niche sites, you could, do a Guestographic campaign and have it pan out really well. I know, like the guys at Authority Hacker, their, sort of public case study that they showcase often, Health Ambition, they, cite many good results based on, Guestographics and some of the other, concepts that we've talked about before. The interesting thing is, like, a lot of times by the time we're teaching about it and we get the results, like a lot of other people are doing it. So it becomes like more saturated, like the longer it is from when we actually share the results. And I think Brian does the same thing. Like I try not to publish anything until I actually have the results in, rather than like doing a case study where it's like live, where I don't have the results. I don't know if it's going to work. And it's sort of frustrating to see, or not frustrating for me personally, but it's sort of, I question the wisdom of publishing a case study like in progress before the results are in, like using a new concept. It's interesting to do the testing or whatever, but it's kind of like, it's not cool for your audience if they implement it right behind you and then you find out it was wrong. So, okay, cool. Any other questions? I need to jet here, and I will mention I think I may trim down the number of live streams per week to like 2 to 3. I'm not quite sure. One of them may be like a longer form webinar, but basically I'm trying to figure out like some different YouTube strategies. Tested out the live stream stuff. It's pretty cool. Right now, I do see I need more content that will bring in new like viewers and stuff. So some stuff I learned on the Noah Kagan YouTube channel and podcast, which that has been a cool experiment. So hopefully I'll have more news on that coming up soon. But I appreciate everyone that participated in that. The response was overwhelming to myself, and I think Noah as well. So that was that was interesting. All right, cool. Any other questions? I know there's like a tiny delay here, so I'm gonna sip some coffee here. All right, cool. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, and have a good rest of the day. And cool. I thought there may be one more question. Leo says, if I change the broadcasting schedule, will I publish it so you know when to tune in? Yeah, that's a great idea. And in fact, you know, I'm sucking at like planning far enough ahead. So like I'm like just keeping up in a few areas, and I think like if I just focus a little bit on like putting together the schedule, putting together a few other tasks that I need to do, number one, it would be easier for me and for everyone else to actually tune in here. But I'll probably, you know, send out a few emails to the email list just so people can like, you know, I imagine there are some people on the email list that don't even know that I do these live streams at all. So I try and get people over to the YouTube channel to watch more, but depending on like what they're into, they may have no idea that these even happen. So anyway, yes, Leo, I will definitely do it once I change it up. I think I'll probably hold it steady for this week and change it up for next week, because Monday's the eclipse and I'm going to be watching the eclipse at that point. So, all right, cool, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Have a great day.